When you hear this voice, you know it's Super Bowl week still.
Let's go, baby.
I am Deano Dimes. I'm joined by Joey Casino, which, by the way, if we give ourselves nicknames, it's going to stick.
Yep.
So we are here to break down a very cool concept, and this is just another way. It's kind of daily fantasy adjacent. This is the Super Bowl Drafts strategy episode. And, of course, these snake draft formats are on DraftKings, of course, if you're in a state that allows for that. And Underdog, which is another app. Joe, am I correct in saying Underdog used to be that app called Drafts?
Correct, yeah. And I think they might have spun off and then like either Draft or something similar to that still exists now. There's a couple of them, but Underdog is most definitely the more popular one here.
Right. And now we're going to explain a little bit about what this is. And basically what it is it's pretty much like a DFS contest. But instead of having your salary that you have to stay within those confines, it is a snake draft with, 2 other people?
Yeah, so both of them are pretty similar structures in the beginning. You're playing against, or I should say you're drafting against 2 people in DraftKings as well as Underdog. By the way, no one else is releasing this content. We've searched far and wide, so that's why we wanted to get this kind of episode out there, because this can be a fun little way, kind of low stress, not really a big investment on your part to kind of dive into some of these. But what do you think? You want to talk about the DraftKings one first, or you want to talk about the Underdog?
Let's start with Underdog, because I deposited money in the summer, did a couple best balls, and I noticed that Underdog has, I guess, more of the sharps, if you will, when it comes to these types of formats. So maybe a word of caution if you're not a huge DFS person, maybe stay clear of Underdog. Joe, do you notice a competitive advantage in one app versus the other, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of either, I guess?
Yeah, so DraftKings is definitely softer. Underdog is a little more traditional fantasy rules. It's half point PPR and there's no bonuses. So with DraftKings comes the stranger rules of the 3-point bonus, like we talked about in the last episode. And you probably know that if you're listening. With the full point PPR. So those rules kind of can create an edge, and it can separate the sharps versus the regulars who are just drafting to have a good time. So when you talk about this current Underdog draft, it's exactly what it sounds like. It is a draft. It's a 3-person snake draft. But then once your team is finalized after those 4 rounds, because there's only 1 game left, so there's only 4 rounds here, you now play against 25,000 other people, kind of like a DraftKings GPP, one of those gigantic tournaments that they have. So that's kind of the edge. You're drafting very similar teams as everyone else. So it's hard to separate yourself when there's 25,000 people. And first place, I'm not even real sure, but first place is obviously a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
And then it drops off as we go further. But this Underdog one is very unique, and it's probably my favorite. And we're gonna get into. I actually have the list on my phone of the ADPs and stuff like that. But if you want, we can just dive right into
because
the whole strat.
I know DraftKings is pretty similar in the way that you are drafting and you're drafting against other live people. So I'm ready to talk players if you are. I guess one of my things is, what's your overall strategy? Do you look for someone available for the ADP, or with respect to in Underdog that you're in a contest with versus 3 people as opposed to 25,000?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, do you try to spice it up? Is Samaje Perine going into your lineup? Are you drafting him?
In the Underdog one, I think he might have to, and I'll explain what I mean by that.
Okay.
The first round or 2, because there are 4 rounds, the first round or 2, it's pretty much just projection. Whichever pick you end up getting, you're going to end up going Cup, Mixon, or Chase, or something along those lines. You're going to get a bell cow or a star for in the wide receiver position. So that's what you should be doing first and second round. You just want to get some good ADP. And then really where you can get unique is the 3rd and 4th rounds. The 3rd round, you can build off of your first pick, or you can kind of leverage from what you don't have. What I mean by that is, let's say you missed out on Cup, but you have the 2nd pick and you go Mixon. What you can do is now jump down 3 or 4 spots, technically sacrificing that projected point total, but then go for an Akers, because then you're saying it's a running game battle. Each guy is going to get 25 carries, and then that would make Cup obsolete in the winning lineup. Now, of course, that's rare. Cup is obviously going to be close to the top of the winning lineup, but it's the whole strategy, what we talked about last time. What do you win when you are accurate, when you're right in your assessment here?
Right.
You do nothing by kind of playing and middling for second, I guess, and this would be still a ridiculous amount, but you gain nothing by being in 15,000th place out of 30,000. Congratulations. There many
Right.
other ways to double your money in life.
Yeah.
We're not playing this to double our money. We're playing this to shoot the moon.
Right.
So that's kind of where the strategy goes. And then I'll let you comment on that, but I have one more point about the underdog, which you can do in the last round. That is kind of cool. So does all that resonate? That makes sense on a surface level point there, right?
It does, and I guess just to recap for the listeners, no quarterbacks, correct?
Correct. Yeah, no quarterbacks, and I'm actually glad you brought that up. In an underdog, there's no kickers and no defense.
Okay.
However, in DraftKings there is, which is where a little bit of the strategy comes in for the DraftKings one as well.
So I guess my whole thing is, if you are in a contest versus two other people, but you're also against the 25,000, if you don't get the first pick, should you just quit the thing, knowing that Cup is going to probably be in the ideal lineup?
I wouldn't quit, because then you kind of have an edge against Cup lineups. I mean, if Cup gets hurt in the first quarter, you're going to be killing yourself.
Exactly.
So just because you don't have Cup, I mean, not having Cup hurts. I actually have done 2 of these to just kind of get ADPs down and prepare for this.
Yeah.
And both times I got first pick, so I was lucky there.
Nice.
So, but then it's lucky and unlucky, because then you're kind of going. You go Cup, and then you don't want to get too weird, because you're going to have a dead lineup if you go.
So then you got to go safe.
Exactly. And like at the very end of the draft, you don't really want to stay safe, because, put it this way.
Right.
If I'm looking at my sheet here, Higbee, Blanton, Uzama, and Sample are among the 4 that are left for the last round. This is what I was going to say about the last round. I think you're really going to like this. Instead of going, it's projecting now that Higbee and Uzama are not going to play / be limited. However, if they do play, those guys are mostly going undrafted. The 2 that I did, those guys didn't get drafted. Blanton got drafted, but I don't think Sample did.
Right.
And both of the tight ends who are hurt did not get drafted. So you can draft them and be like, oh, the counterpoint is, Joe, they're going to get zeros. You only have to start 3 flex positions here, and you don't have to start the 4th.
Yeah.
So that's not the end of the world. I can still win if I do have a 0, because one guy's not going to start anyway. But also, again, what do you win when you're right? If Higbee does play, now all those people, you're lapping them if he scores twice, which is not out of the realm of possibility. We've seen it before this season.
Right, and just a little side anecdote on getting leverage, and sometimes, more often than not, you may look silly, but this seems like a risk-free way to look silly. I'm running back to when it was Panthers-Texans Thursday night. We were just sitting around, and I was like, what happens if I make Chuba Hubbard the captain? And we all laughed it off as like, whatever. But I was like, I'll throw $5 in. And that was the game that McCaffrey got hurt. So I was the only one in, a 5,000 entry contest with Chuba Hubbard at captain. That created such a leverage point where, I almost shot the moon on that one. So
that was one of my favorite moments in the whole DFS season. It's very, very cool.
And he got stopped at the 1. And if he would have got in, I would have won the first place.
Yeah.
So that was fun. It's fun to create some leverage there. But just know, exactly like you said, I want to harp on. This is not really for a sustainable kind of thing. It's fun, like especially getting into DraftKings. This is not a way that I would recommend, hey, build your bankroll and grind it. It's more of like, you got to take it for what it is and like, make that money back by betting on the game.
Yep.
So very interesting. I like that risk-free leverage spot. That's really cool. So Joe, I do want to ask you, if you get Cup in the first round, are you then looking to grab like Odell and just like corner the market on Rams wide receivers, and in a way you kind of took Stafford, even though you're not allowed to get a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to do it, and it goes back to our episode a couple days ago where we had talked about projecting game script. So while in over game script where the pass catchers for the Rams dominate is not super likely, when you do have Cup and maybe Odell fell to you and you're like, I can't not take him. I have to gobble up that ADP. That's fine. Play it the rest of the way. You don't want to grab Mixon, because then, I guess you could grab Mixon, because then you're telling yourself a story where Bengals are leading and then the Rams have to throw to catch up.
Right.
So I guess Mixon would, and he wouldn't even be there anyway. But I think you understand the point that I'm saying.
Yeah.
Where if the Rams are going off offensively through the air, how does that affect the Bengals, and what can I do to maximize now my first place equity? Because again, we don't want to just middle and come in 10,000th, because that's nothing. That doubles our money, and that's just not what we want to do.
Yeah, so before we get into some deep cuts, I do want you to address the DraftKings kicker and defense going in. What are the ADPs of the kickers? Do people leave the kickers on the board? Like, how are we handling that situation?
Yeah, so they probably go in the last round. I was looking at the ADPs for that as well, and it looks like they're around the same as where the tight ends are for underdog. Now, the reason why it's different for DraftKings is because you're not totally throwing away a floor for DraftKings like you are underdog. because the kickers and defense can give you a really good floor. More specifically, the kickers. Last round, you don't want to necessarily punt that. Excuse me, because you're only playing against two other guys.
Mm-hmm.
So like, why would I want to just go for the moon? If you score 1,000 points, guess what? You still 3x your money as if you scored one more than the second place guy.
Yeah.
So sometimes getting a kicker in the last round, or maybe even reaching for an ADP or two instead of trying to touchdown hunt like you would on underdog would be better. I mean, what would be better? Taking let's say a sample on the Bengals, who, trust me, he won't get much burn with or without Uzama.
Yeah, my whole thing about fantasy and daily fantasy in general it's opportunity and talent, and if you have one or the two, usually I'll look your way. So Sample's getting looks just because of opportunity. Yeah. I don't think he necessarily has the talent. I mean, he could shove one right on me, but I was looking up the Bengals depth chart to see who might be the pass-catching tight end this week.
Yeah, I assume it would be him if it's not Uzama, but the thing is, like, especially in DraftKings scoring, you're looking at the kickers. Two 40-yard field goals gets you 8 points from, let's say, McPherson. That's way more likely than Sample to score a touchdown to try to beat.
I was just going to say
he's
that.
not going to go 5 for 60.
I think
he'll get a touchdown.
I was just going to say, I think a Sample ideal game would be like 2 for 25 and a touchdown, and it's
exactly.
Like
you're touchdown hunting. I don't want to do that.
And the one thing too that I do want to make a point on that when we get into with the main guys too. When they release more props, I want to get some of these like real B-side guys. Like I want to see Sample's line. If it's 1.5, I might look over. If it's 2.5, I'm definitely going to jam the under.
Yep, yeah, I would say that's a pretty good strategy. But it's pretty cool now how you see the DraftKings. Obviously, the payout is way different in DraftKings.
Yeah.
But the strategy can be a little different in DraftKings versus underdog, and I think there's money to be made in both. Probably because you're getting softer competition with DraftKings as opposed to underdog having to face 25,000 other people who, several of them know what they're doing. It makes it, a lot harder. So
yeah,
I'm excited, man. I'm looking forward to doing more of these.
No, all that sounds awesome, and I guess just I think we touched on it already. Like, what is a better strategy in your opinion? Mega stack one team, like for example, just take all the Rams players and see if they can't, dominate the Bengals, or do you like to just take all the position type of like, hey, you're going to take all the running backs? Like, let's just say you go top 3, Mixon, Akers, and Michelle, so nobody else has a running back.
Yeah, that's
kind of cornered the market.
That's kind of interesting, especially in that under game script that we were projecting. Yeah. I would say I'd rather do that. I don't mind team stacking in general, as long as you tell yourself the right story, and that story hits, of course. But with DraftKings scoring, I would lean. I know that the ADP's chase is going higher by one spot in DraftKings because of the way wide receivers score in DraftKings because it's full point PPR.
Yeah.
So I would be more inclined to lean more to a wide receiver heavy build, not necessarily a team heavy build in DraftKings.
Okay.
But I'm glad you brought that up because that's a pretty important distinction. I don't know if team stacking is as important, just unless you're projecting a 38-7 type romp, which would then in underdog at least make you unique.
Yeah.
DraftKings, that doesn't really make you that unique because you're facing 2 other guys and everyone is low owned because you're the only one who has them in your league.
Yeah.
So that's where you can get different in underdog by team stacking if you were to do so.
Yeah, and just a reminder, like we touched on the other daily fantasy episode, if you're in a state that allows for real money wagering, you could live bet or you could just either middle or hedge with different bets. I mean, let's just say you build an over game script draft and that's the way it was dictated to you, then throw a little money on the under, or vice versa. You get all 3 running backs, throw a crumb on the over, and maybe this way you guarantee yourself a floor. Or like we always say, maybe you could double down and go, no, I have the under game script. I'm going to go ahead and take the under.
Yes, absolutely. Look, I mean, that's pretty much it, man. I don't think there's anything else to kind of attack. We didn't really talk about defense on DraftKings, but I think it's the same kind of thing with the kickers, though.
Right.
I think that they're more likely to get, especially the Rams. I mean, they'll go higher than the Bengals in ADP wise, but I think you'll get a couple of extra points as opposed to Sample.
Right.
It's more boom or bust, and there's no benefit for that on DraftKings.
And shot out of a cannon, who would you have the dead last pick of the entire draft?
Yes.
Who do you like better, Evans, Jake Funk, Sample, or Higbee? Even though we don't know his status.
I'll tell you what. This is kind of a little spoiler. I have Higbee in both of the ones that I drafted.
Okay.
So I have Kupp and I also have Higbee in both of them. To tell you the truth, I might have the same exact team for both. I don't even know. But that's what we talked about, man. I might look like an idiot. Higbee might not play, or he gets 2 for 40 and 2 touchdowns.
Right.
And I look like a genius. And
my bold prediction is, although P. Ryan had that long touchdown catch, Evans was drafted this year. He's a rookie. I think that, let's just say if, as we mentioned, the Chuba Hubbard lineup that almost hit big, I guess the game script is if one of the starting running backs gets hurt, I honestly think that if Mixon gets hurt, I think Evans is going to be the guy, not Pirine.
I could see that for that early down work that Mixon is doing, man. I would do a couple of drafts if I was to get Evans as literally when you get to the last pick, throw out ADP.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Just go to Evans.
Down. I know I did during best balls. I was scrolling all the way down to get Tyler Conklin, my boy. But it's one of those things where, as we always mention, it's not very often that you will hear Too Sharp saying, just get fun with it, get weird with it. But that's kind of what we're recommending here.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, this was a great glimpse into another way to wager on the Super Bowl here at the Winning Ticket Podcast / YouTube channel, where having fun is -1000.